Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Catalyzing Conversations. My name is Todd Nilsson. I'm one of the volunteers with Catalyzing the Future, a series of events that are designed to help shake up your thinking, get you thinking in new and more positive, more resilient, more anti-fragile ways, if you will. And I am here with my good friend and the founder of the Catalyzing the Future events, Sai here. Sai, good morning to you.
How are you? It's great to see you, and it's great to see CS. So thank you again, Todd.
Yeah, we're so honored to have as our guest this morning, CS Ferreira. CS, welcome to the broadcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Todd. It's really a privilege to be with you and Sai today.
Would definitely appreciate it.
This is an exciting week for us. We've been gearing up for an event on the 9th. It was originally going to be a lot of training, but we're absolutely going to be having some large panel discussions on Wednesday the 9th here, live streaming here on this channel. So stay tuned and be sure to tune in. I think there are two of them, and Sai, I don't know if you wanted to say a word about them before we jumped in with Sias here.
Definitely two panels, and we have a number of guests from different perspectives, full panels, and actually Sias is going to be on one of those panels. So definitely this is a sort of a precursor to Sias you're thinking, and people will dive in even more deeply with the panels and the triangulation and cross wisdom, if you will. So it's great to have Sias here. Should be very interesting conversations on Wednesday.
Excellent. So I guess with no further ado, CS, we're so glad you're able to join us here this morning. Thank you so much. I was looking through your LinkedIn profile this morning before we got together, and I was fascinated. I really liked I always look at people's headlines, so I was looking at yours, and you were talking about I support leaders and companies to design an anti-fragile, multi-generational future in order to make a healthy contribution to society. I love that. I'm wondering, if you can maybe expand on that idea. What do you mean by a multi-generational future? How does anti-fragile get us there? I was really fascinated and wanted to. That was top of mind. The question I wanted to ask you today.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Todd. That is a mouthful, right? So when I heard you say that just now, it was like, whoa, that is actually a lot. But I think for me, when we think of anti-fragility, it is putting myself deliberately in chaos to learn and to grow, and through that I become stronger. So I'm an avid rock climber. I don't do rock climbing like Alex Honnold would, that climbed El Capitan, but I do climb, and I know that I get stronger when I actually am on the wall. So when I'm on the wall, I get stronger, but I also get stronger when I rest. So the fact is, the more I put myself in that fearful situation, if I can put it that way, and I can put myself into that chaos and continually put myself and others in chaos, the more I can actually grow from that. And that's why I think that where the multi-generational comes in for me is that when we look at really successful businesses long term, it's actually those who could reinvent themselves in different generations, who could make themselves relevant. So for that to happen, we have to build a culture of taking risk. So I have to put in my culture, almost in my DNA, I have to say, okay, am I willing and am I actually creating the space for everyone in the organization to be able to take risk, healthy risk taking, so that when they have to take the company forward in a different generation, they can still do that. Because risk taking is risk taking no matter where we do that and what generation we do that in. But I think that is really key for me, is how am I preparing my company to actually take the risk?
I like, there was one word that I glommed onto that you said, which was take healthy risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How do you define what's healthy and what's not? So I guess the way I think of it, part of my DNA and makeup is I'm very interested in games, wargaming, simulations as a way to practice the act of or the behavior of risk taking. That's something that kind of helps us get into a mindset to do that. But when you're running an organization, I mean, risk is that's a scary thing. And if you've got something that's working and it's going okay, like, what's my incentive to take these risks, and how much is healthy risk? That's always the sort of thing that I struggle with a little bit.
Yeah, I think when I think of healthy risk taking, it's like change, right? So people say today that change is the only constant, and we have to adapt to change. But not all change is actually healthy for us. So I think we have to ask the question: what risk is healthy for us as an organization, and what risk we would probably take is not the same risk another company will take. So we can also not compare our risk taking with others. We do a lot of chess games to actually simulate risk taking. So we talk in chess, we talk about active play and passive play. And passive play is for me risk management, and active play for me risk taking. And if I know where I am on the board and I know what's the right move to take next, that for me is a healthy risk taking. So it's not being aggressive in the way I play chess, for example, but because aggressive play is just risk taking, right? So we are just taking any risk. Let's just take risk. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is let's be active in calculating and taking the right risk at the right time, because that's also the other concept that fits into this, is the timely risk taking. Sometimes we wait too long before we actually take that risk.
That's a really great insight. Thank you for that.
Yeah, very well said. And I think this is one of the key reasons, exactly as Todd, you pointed out, and Sias, you're sharing. One of the reasons I reached out to you is because it's very crucial. A lot of people are looking at anti-fragility and not really examining the proactive nature of it. You know, there's an active, proactive aspect to it versus reactive. And the reactive really goes back to resilience, if you will, versus the proactive really pushes us into anti-fragility. So, yes, I would love for you to elaborate kind of as you're describing and the healthy risk, if you will. I would love for you to elaborate as to how you're seeing your clients and organizations really put this into play, into practice.
Yeah, I think for us, so we actually do a lot of assessments and training on resilience. And we have a little bit of different perspective on resilience than what you would see from a Nassim Taleb in terms of robustness. So we would not talk of resilience as robust, but we would talk of resilience as the foundation for anti-fragility. So the fact is, when I am healthy, my risk-taking will be healthy. So I'll give the example of chess again. So if I am fearful when I play against Sai, who is a grandmaster chess player, if I'm fearful, that talks about my health when I enter the game, then I am robust and I try to protect myself. And that for us is not resilience. If I am resilient, I come to the game in a resilient manner. Then when I play against Sai, who is a grandmaster, for example, then I would play in a risk-taking, anti-fragile manner that will actually grow my resilience. So I strongly believe that the more I put myself into the chaos, the more I take the risk, I don't just become anti-fragile, but I build up a stronger base of resilience that next time I can actually make an even greater leap into the chaos. So if you look at the work done by Aaron Antonovsky wrote the book Salutogenese, German book that focuses on what are things we should do to be healthy. And that for me is a proactive step rather than robustness is, I just need to protect myself. I should not have any stress because stress is negative. But the moment I have that perspective, that mindset, the more I actually stop growing and moving forward. And then we say that so many times, we've heard the quotes, when you stand still, you're not going forwards, you're actually going backwards.
Yep.
So robustness for me is different than resilience, I would say. Yeah.
Most definitely. And again, it's a crucial distinction, because really from robustness to resilience to anti-fragility, and the proactiveness as it increases.
Yeah.
From one of the questions, Todd, and I know you and I have talked about this, and we've seen it across multiple guests, has the shock of 2020, has the stress of 2020 with COVID and the impacts of it, is it enough to really wake organizations, people up to this healthy, proactive nature of approaching risk? Sias, what are your thoughts?
I think that is a loaded question, if I can put it that way. I think in South Africa, for example, many people have woken up. Many companies have woken up and said, "Whoa, we have to do something." When we consult, we also say that the reality is that this is not the last crisis that we will have. This is the first of a very intense crisis, but we're going to have more crises like this. I mean, I stay in South Africa for the last 30, 40 years. I mean, I was born in crisis. We are so used to that now that we find it strange if people want to just have things work normally, because what will we do then? So we are so used to the stress, and things are failing, but I think things are going to fail all over the world, more and more, and we cannot rely on the systems, but we have to adapt the systems. So I think some companies have adapted, others have not. And I think that has a lot to do with our mindset and also the way we approach the crisis. Do we see this as a short-term crisis that we just have to survive? Like, sure, we've survived the crisis, we are now over this. Or do we use this as an opportunity to say, hey, this crisis reveals a lot to us. Things that we are prepared for, things that we do well, that we can continue doing, but also things that we realize, hey, this is not working for us, and we have to adapt. And are we willing to make the changes really, or are we just trying to make the changes to survive the crisis? So we talk about the fact that from this crisis, if transformation isn't the goal or the final outset, then we have failed to use this crisis in the most effective way. Yeah.
Well said. There's a word that comes to mind as I kind of listen to the conversation, and I'd love to kind of get your reaction to it and see if perhaps you've even used it in kind of the work that you're doing. I personally do not like the word anti-fragile. I like anti-fragility because it expresses degrees, if you will, very, very intentionally. So I really shy away from the word anti-fragile in a lot of the work that I do. But one of the key things that I pick up on in some of the conversation, and especially here, anti-fragility is more a stance. It's not simply a destination, but it's a stance. It's more than merely a mindset, but it's a mindset, behavior set, and a bunch of other aspects. I'd love to get your thoughts on, is anti-fragility a stance more than anything else?
Yeah, I have to agree with it. I've been Googling and trying to find a real word for anti-fragility. And that's why we stick with the word resilience at this stage, just because of our perspective of resilience. But I do believe that. I think that anti-fragility for me is an outlook on life.
Yep.
It is a lifestyle. So in my culture, where I grew up, Afrikaans culture, we had this saying which we said, what doesn't break you, make you stronger. What doesn't break you, make you stronger. And we were trained as children almost on that. And I still have that mindset. If it's not going to break me, it's going to make me stronger. So what I do is I go into the situation to see if it will break me.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds really crazy sometimes, but the fact is things haven't broken me as much at this stage. Does it mean that I don't feel pain? I don't feel the hurt of sometimes being in the chaos? No, definitely. I've had some pain also in going into chaos. So I'm not the Superman, but the fact is that it I discover new things about myself as I continue in my stance or my mindset of living this life of trying to find things that can break me. And I think we are more anti-fragile or anti-fragility, if I can put it that way, as human beings as we would think.
Yeah.
I don't know about the two of you, gentlemen, but I've learned the most when I was in a situation of sink or swim.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Very much so. And I think people surprise themselves as to how truly anti-fragile we can be as human beings, and when it manifests. I think we underestimate, or let me even be more aggressive in saying it this way. I think we are conditioned, societally conditioned, to believe that we are less anti-fragile than we truly are, and we can really surprise ourselves, with the work that you're doing and with others are doing. So I completely agree with you.
One of the things that this is striking me, I'm always influenced by what I happen to be reading at the moment. And I read a lot of strange things, but right now I'm reading a manga comic called Shaman King, and it's about sort of these young kids who are like shamanic, and they're in this sort of conversation. And what's striking me about all of this is one of the conversations that happens in it is. Someone makes a remark. Well, these are kids that are shamanic. Why would you even allow them into this adult competition that's happening? And one of the wise elders kind of says, well, it's because young people don't understand their limitations. That by the time we're older, we kind of get set in our sense of limitations, and so we have a ceiling that we're keenly aware of. But young people don't have that, which is one of the things that I loved about what you said is when you were young, sort of that idea of like what doesn't break me makes me stronger. That's something when you're a child, you don't really acknowledge what your limitations are. And if you can kind of build that mindset when you're younger, we have to almost untrain ourselves to realize that we don't have those limitations on our growth as adults or as older people, it seems like. So, anyways, that's my funny comparison of the day.
I agree completely with that, Todd. I think the fact is that society and the structures and the systems put in place is there to manage life. It's not always life-giving. If a structure or system for me is not life-giving, it's only managing our life for us, and then it actually takes the life away. We see now from Corona, this whole crisis, that about 1 billion children are in homeschool. So we can see that the schooling system around the world in a crisis wasn't always life-giving. And therefore, other systems had to be created. And that's why 1 billion children, think about that. That's a lot. So many children are in some kind of homeschooling system because it is giving them life, and it's probably more uniquely set to their learning abilities and their desires and their needs. So I think, definitely the fact is that we have to think about systems also as giving life. Because as adults, we just manage life. And I think that's why we were so caught off guard with Corona, is life was going on. Both of you have probably heard about the term VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we talk now about exponential VUCA. So it is exponentially growing, and how are we not managing it? VUCA shouldn't make us fearful. VUCA should make us excited to say, hey, what can we learn from this exponential VUCA that we are entering into? But if you look at many leaders, especially political leaders, they are of an age group or generation that grew up when systems were set, and like the Industrial Revolution, right? So it was just always just working for them. Not everyone, but for most. Everything was just working, so we just continue with that, and we believe and we trust the systems. In South Africa, the last 30 years, we realized we cannot trust the systems. We have to do something else. And we are taking ourselves off the grid and all those type of things because we realize we have to take responsibility. And I think when we have lost our key sense of self-responsibility and we trust systems more, then we get stuck between that that whole gap between, okay, am I actually an adult that just needs to manage my life, or am I still, where's the child in me that can still take that risk?
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said. It really is giving aliveness, if you will, exactly as I've talked about. Likewise, aliveness is a core aspect that we do lose sometimes, and I'll say most times, a lot of times, because of allowing the system to extract it from us, and then we give into it. We just go with it. We lose that zest for it, if you will.
Yeah. So, oh, go ahead, Sai.
Forgive me. I was going to ask. There's one thing that, as I've been to South Africa just once, and there's something that grabbed me when I was there, very, very directly. I'll say very, very. I don't want to say abruptly, but clearly, for lack of better words, the situatedness in nature, and how the South African experience is rooted in a very natural being, if you will. I'm interested in how, and I might not be describing it well enough respectfully, but I'm very interested in how that has influenced your experience relative to anti-fragility and what have you, the naturalness of it.
If I may ask, what do you mean by the naturalness of it? Is it the naturalness of the people? Is it the naturalness of nature? What do you mean?
All of the above. It's when I was there, I was in Cape Town, actually, with Roderick, who definitively Todd knows likewise. There's a naturalness to how life exists. There is a flowness to our being. There is an ease to interacting with each other and with the world and the way that we're influenced. And what I found is, for lack of any other words, there's less resistance to the reality with which we live and exist and what have you. And that to me, that seems to feed a anti-fragile stance, if you will, more than an over-engineered system, for lack of better words. I hope that's a little bit clearer, CS.
Yeah, I think I understand a little bit more now. I think we have to realize as South Africans where we came from, and what we realized in the 1980s, 1990s with the end of apartheid, and where we actually, all of us said, hey, we want to build a new South Africa. Have we built that new South Africa? Not yet. Are we busy building it? It doesn't always look like it, but we are. Because you must also remember we are 11 official cultures, and we actually have I always say we have all of Africa in South Africa. And it takes much longer to build a healthy society from so many cultures than where you have one or two dominant cultures. So I think that mentality is definitely there, where we all say it, and we still all say that. Some people are a little bit tired of doing that because they see the systems aren't working, and they thought everything would work out by now, and that's why some leave, and that's also okay for us. But I'm staying in South Africa, for example, because I want to keep building on it, because I want to see the example that will come out of it. I want to see the results. And if I stop building now, in 10 years' time, I know I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, hey, man, I wish I just stayed.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset definitely is there. So I had a conversation with one of my clients 2 weeks ago, and I actually thought of this. I don't know if I will write a book on it, but the whole topic of we are in front, but we don't know it.
Mm.
And I think sometimes when we are in chaos, we can choose to look at the good or the bad in that, and that will determine our perspective. And I think in South Africa, we are in a good space because we are learning skills that is really so important when connected to anti-fragility, working with different cultures, understanding different cultures, and so on. So it's definitely in our DNA, and it's a heart's desire of all South Africans. Doesn't matter what culture we come from, but to live it practically and to move forward isn't always the easiest thing to do. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And definitively, I'm really looking forward to Wednesday because we have yourself, Sias, and likewise we have Heather Cresswell, who's actually out of South Africa as well. So definitively, it should be a very, very vibrant conversation all around.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to that.
Excellent.
Looking forward to participate in it.
So I had a question for you, Yes. So as I'm kind of thinking about this, I understand that one of the things you said earlier was like you seek out chaos to become stronger, right? And I get it as as a chess player. I'm going to seek out tougher opponents so that I get better at my game. If I'm a rock climber, like you said, you seek out more challenging kind of situations. I think about like Bruce Lee, who was always seeking out a tougher opponent so that he could get better and learn different styles of martial arts and all of that. How does that apply to companies? What constitutes a more chaotic situation for them to seek out in order to get stronger? What, as you've been consulting with organizations, I'm not asking you to share specific companies, but what are some examples of some things that companies have done that you've worked with in order to kind of force themselves into those growth situations more actively rather than passively just being reactive or resilient?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because when we just talk about the philosophical part of anti-fragility, it doesn't help us, right? So the fact is that I think that is really where future strategy comes in a lot. It's also going into different markets, I would say, to put yourself into the space of new markets, and just look at what does customers actually say about a new product that we bring out. So a lot of people focus on design thinking, customer orientated design. That is the focus also. So I think for me it is to get to that place where you put yourself in the chaos. Actually, it takes a lot of work and thinking and design before you actually can put yourself into the chaos. So we did that a few years ago as Xpand, where we actually we work with leaders, but we went to leaders and we asked them, hey, what do you want from a leadership conference? We asked them, why do you go to a leadership conference? Why don't you go? We asked the hard questions. Why are you fearful of doing consulting work with us? We just put ourselves out there. And I think we got such good feedback that actually changed the way we serve our own customers. And I think for me, it starts by asking the customers the honest questions and not being afraid of the answers. Because at the end, any company only exists when there's customers. And if I am fearful of the answers or the feedback from my customers, then that tells me, okay, I need to actually go into that space more. So I would say a starting point would be to just go to the customers and really have a heart-to-heart talk, not just a survey or anything like that. Really understand their frustrations, because that's where the chaos is. It's not in our life, but in the life of our customers. I don't say they have chaotic lives, but they use the products and the services. and they get frustrated by things. And how can we then assist them in actually making that better? But I think there's a lot of work that should be done before we actually put ourselves in the chaos. And then there's also seasons where we should not put ourselves in the chaos. But that is more strategic design process that we take customers through than a generic thing that we could say, hey, this is working or doing that. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Todd.
No, it's fantastic. I love it, and I think that I almost wanted to flip it around on the other side of it, because then I have to ask, like, is it successful? Is it, we can argue it, is a highly successful company like Apple, are they putting themselves in chaos? Are they truly, talking to their customers about what's wanted? Because I think about an organization like that was largely driven by the vision of one man for the creation of product, and not necessarily talking to customers, but saying, like, I know what I want, and I'm going to build this, and then other people are going to want it.
Yeah, that can also happen, right?
Right.
So it's probably not for everyone the same. But if you look at many of the companies that have disrupted industries, they were once customers of that industry.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's profound. Yeah.
I mean, like a Steve Jobs creating the iPad. What was the first product? I forget now.
The iPod, was that the
iPod?
Mm-hmm.
The iPad, the iPod.
Yeah.
He was saying, "Hey, what do I want?" But he was putting himself in the shoes of the customer by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as Xpand, we just say that the customer is king. So we want to serve the customer, because if we make their life better, our life automatically will be better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just our approach. And so that we could say is like a slogan that we use to put ourselves in the chaos, to say, okay, how do we put ourselves into that space? But it can be different as well, as you say, yeah. I don't think there's either or.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I like that too. We need both. And perhaps, I mean, you could argue that Steve Jobs had so internalized or so listened to those voices that was just part of him, and that he was able to, it's the sense of he had his finger so on the pulse of what was needed that he didn't need to talk to anybody else about it. He already had that vision, of what it could be. So I'm not a Jobs worshiper, by the way. I'm just
Yeah. I don't know him, so I cannot comment as much, because
Right.
I don't like to go on assumptions. But we can make some conclusions. But I think the question for a company like Apple going into the future is to say, how do we stay relevant?
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is an anti-fragility question, because it's good to build a company for the last 20 or 30 years, but how do we take that company and make it relevant over 100 years from now? Yeah. That for me is the challenge I like, is to say, okay, how do I actually help a company to be successful in 100 years from now, which we don't know what the future will be.
That's a rare point of view in our short-term returns-driven global economy that we have, to think about what that long-term looks like and how that can be made to happen. I mean, that's more thinking that you would get maybe in the Roman Republic, of how can I make sure that the Republic continues 500 years from now, right? Rather than today, which is what does next quarter's results look like, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's our challenge, because I think as we have more crisis, we have to look not just short term, but also long term. So I had a training the other day where I also said to the participants, I said, we can't let go of long-term habits in a short-term crisis. Mm-hmm. So there's certain things that makes us anti-fragile, if I can put it that way, that we should continue in crisis as well. Those are actually the habits we should keep on doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's that's the focus. Is not, and that's a challenge for us also as Xpand South Africa, is to not just think short term now, but to think long term as well. So what's our 10 or 20-year vision, but also what is our 3 months vision?
Mm-hmm.
What is our strategy in both spaces, if I can put it that way?
Yeah. And it's a delicate balance, exactly to your point. And yeah, the easy answer is ignore one for the other, but that's not realistic. And that definitively is the place of discomfort, is to bring those together, exactly like you're saying. So very, very powerful, CS. Yeah.
Yeah. Said it right, right.
I don't know, Todd, if you had another question. I was gonna jump in just with another thought, if you will.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. CS, I know we have you on the panel here coming up on Wednesday, thinking about kind of reflections on 2020 and foresight as we look forward. And I don't want to take the thunder out of the panel conversation, but anything to share with us in anticipation of the panel relative to reflections on 2020 and foresight into 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, I would say be in the discussion for those watching this, because I think the reality is that reflection in 2020, personally from my perspective, really helped me to stay fresh in my mind for 2021. And we did, even with our customers, we did so much reflection. That's why I'm so excited about Wednesday. Is the fact is that those reflections will reveal golden nuggets of wisdom that will help us into the future. So I can't say what the reflections will be like, because I'm part of a panel, and I think there's such great other ladies and gentlemen who are great professionals in their industries as well. But I think just come and listen to that. That would be my advice to anyone, is to just say, hey, listen and do your own reflection, even beforehand. Just go and write down for yourself. What have you reflected on? What's the lessons you learned from 2020? But I think one of the biggest things for me, I have to say, is actually on the reflection part, is the fact that I had to reflect every 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make intentional time to reflect every 8 weeks, because there was so much happening, and the changes were quick and drastic that I couldn't reflect every 3 months or every 6 months. So I had to adjust my habit of reflection to really make the lessons worthwhile and timely, to keep myself, as I said in the beginning, taking that timely risk. So that was, I would say, my biggest lesson from 2020.
Well said. Well said all around. Excellent. Anything at all, Todd, or should we move into sort of final thoughts and then close out the conversation?
No, this has been wonderful. I am so looking forward to this Wednesday's panel discussions for exactly as CS expressed it. And that ability to hold different people's ideas, maybe even sometimes seemingly contradictory ideas in our head at the same time. That's part of the richness that's going to come out of that event, and so I'm very excited about it. I'm very glad you're going to be a part of it, CS. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Likewise.
thank you. Yeah, I'm also looking forward to that, and I appreciate being part of this community as well. I think there's so much learning in a community like this that will inspire us to move forward in our anti-fragility.
Well said. Well said. We're looking forward to it, definitively. Thank you, CS. All yours, my good friend Todd.
All right. Well, I think this is bringing us to the end of another really thought-provoking episode. I got a lot out of this personally. I hope that if you've been watching that you do too, or if you tuned in late, that you go back to the beginning and watch this, because it's been a great conversation. I did see that Heather Cresswell jumped in and made a quick comment in there. She was watching. Hello, Heather. Good to see you. Again, we strongly encourage everybody who tunes into this or catches this on the replay that you join us this Wednesday, December the 9th, for another Catalyzing the Future event with 2 great panel discussions. You can get all the details for this on catalyzingthefuture.com, or if you're following us on Facebook, or on our YouTube channel, you will see there are placeholders for these discussions already set to go. So I do hope that you set reminders for the event and that you can join us that day. Come ready to bring in your ideas and your thoughts and your perspectives, because yours are just as relevant as the panelists, and we want to have a rich conversation arising out of all this. So that's my plug. If you haven't already, please like, share, comment on today's conversation, and I've included a link to the LinkedIn profile for Sias on the show notes down below, and as well as all of our social media links, too. So thank you once again for joining us, Sias. It's been an honor and a privilege to get to know you a little bit better today.
Thank you, Sias.
Thank you so much, Todd.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, my friend Sai. We'll catch up with you on Wednesday.
Most definitely. Likewise. Thank you, Sias. Thank you, Todd. Take care now.
That's it, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.